Today, a lot of people still don't like Jesus as God. Everybody likes Jesus as kind of a souped-up Mahatma Gandhi, okay? And so, in other words, Jesus is a good prophet. Jesus is a good prophet, kind of like Martin Luther King on steroids or something. But anyways, where everybody has problems with Jesus is his claims to be God. That's where they have the problem with Jesus. Jesus is a good prophet. Everybody loves Jesus as a good prophet. As soon as Jesus claims to be God, that's when people freak out. Now, where did this godness of Jesus come from? Some of the critics today will say that this thing that Jesus was God was actually legend that actually developed over a period of time and developed, the legend of Jesus developed. So this legendary Jesus developed. But I want to ask you about his apostles, who they would say the apostles then designed this, made up these legends about Jesus and stuff. But what do you know about the apostles? The apostles were really pretty courageous people. Early on, Jesus' disciples, Jesus, you go to the death, we will go to death with you, Jesus, and we will stick by your side. Yeah, Jesus, we are right there with you. We believe in you with our whole heart and stuff. And all of a sudden, Jesus gets captured in the Garden of Gethsemane. What happens to the disciples? These guys somebody get killed around here. They're going to kill somebody, man. We're going to get out of here. Dead disciples don't work too well, Jesus, so we're going to see you later and stuff. So the disciples take off, right? Now, I ask you one question. At the cross of Jesus, the disciples are all there. Jesus, come down, do it, man. Where were the disciples? All hiding in fear and stuff like that. It's the women that are around stuck with them and stuff. But then what happens? 3 days later, all of a sudden, they go to the tomb. What happens to the disciples then? Is there a transition with the disciples? That the disciples now, will the disciples who were fearful and ran away, question, after the resurrection, will those disciples die for Jesus Christ? Tell me what happens to, I would say 12 disciples, but actually one of them kind of, did the bucket list thing, didn't make it. Anyways, kicked the bucket. But anyway, so Judas is gone. But those 11 disciples, what happened to all of them, virtually all except one? We wonder about John. But all the other disciples, do we have records of what happened? What happened to all of them? Every one of them. Yeah, they died horrible deaths. To talk about Peter, let's not talk about it, but how they died. I mean, we're talking nasty ways that died. Let's just use Peter, for example. I don't want to get into it. Well, let's not get into it. But anyways, Peter is crucified upside down and stuff like that. Okay? Did he die? Now, question, if he just made this up, and he just made up the legend of Jesus being God, would you die for something like that? And by the way, if one or two might die because they're crazy and stuff like that, would all 11 of them die? And never say, well, I just made that up, man. I was just kidding. It was, don't kill me. Okay? No, they all walked to their death and were martyred. Okay? And even John, they tried to fry him in oil and stuff like that. So what I'm saying is, did they believe this with all their heart? They believed it to the point of what? Death. Now, by the way, was this just putting a bullet in their head? No. Many of them were tortured to death, and that's how they went to their death. So this idea that the disciples just made up these legends. By the way, what's the other problem with that? If the disciples just made up these stories, what's the other problem? Were there people around there besides the disciples that lived around that could blow the whistle on them and say, that's not true? This didn't happen. Jesus rose from the dead, the disciples say. There were people around there who said, no, that didn't ever happen. We were there. It never happened. What's the problem with that? Does Paul say, hey, if you don't believe me about Jesus resurrecting from the dead, he said, there are 500 people still alive here. You can go ask them. 500 people all saw Jesus rise from the dead. Besides the 12 apostles, and besides me, Paul, I saw Jesus on the road to Damascus, alive after the dead. Okay? So in other words, they can't make it up because there's other people that would have disconfirmed their stories. It's bogus and stuff. And Paul's saying, go ask the people who were eyewitnesses.